We saw the then Home Secretary out there talking to the tech companies directly, telling them that they are going to be held responsible
But
for
they're
these
not.
things.
But they're laughing at the British politicians. They are laughing at you because you might call them in, you might talk tough on them. But what's happened? What's happened on X for the last year is more and more disinformation is being spread, and Elon Musk is loving it. And we heard in the last half hour from the Communities Minister of the government, Jim McMahon, who outlined their plans to keep people safe. As up to 40 gatherings are expected today. We're saying gatherings because we don't know quite what it will be. The fear is, of course, that they will be riots. That hasn't happened yet. Dealing with far-right unrest is surely a cross-party issue. But do the Tories think there should be anything done differently? We're joined now by Matt Vickers, the Shadow Policing Minister. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
You're from Stockton, which is not that far from Middlesbrough, where there was rioting last week. How do you judge the mood on the ground in the places that you go to, Matt Vickers? What are you seeing? What are you sensing?
You know what we saw last week was absolutely horrendous. Families living there, opening living through nights of hell, locking themselves in, hoping that their window isn't going to get smashed, hoping their car isn't going to get smashed, going out the next day to scenes of utter chaos. And that's for the people who didn't get caught up in it, who didn't get assaulted, for the brave police officers on the street who didn't have to go through some of the things that they went through last week. Absolutely horrendous scenes. And you know what? For people out there, you can have strong views about immigration. You can be deeply concerned about what might happen to a place of worship, but none of that gives you an excuse to arm yourself, to go out there, assault other members of the public, do damage to public and private property, assault police officers. We saw people hurling things at police officers. Absolutely horrendous scenes. Community is tense. We've talked about the fact that social media has a big part to play. In the last few days, there has been panic, complete panic every time something looks like it might have occurred in another area. So yesterday in my part of the world, we saw an incident we heard via social media thoughts that something had happened. There was another riot on our hands because there'd been a dispute over parking in a job centre that happens to be next to a Sikh temple. People are tense, people are panic-stricken. They're devastated to see what's happened to that community. But at the same time, keen to get on with it, keen to build bridges, keen to bring the community back together. We saw a huge army of volunteers out there cleaning up the mess the morning after. And that's what we're determined to do now, get on, move forwards, and make sure that those people responsible feel the full force of the law.
You mentioned social media, and it's people saying inflammatory things on social media are a problem. And unfortunately, that's happened in your backyard. A Tory councillor in Stockton resigned overnight after saying on social media Muslims would do whatever it takes to make the whole world Islamic. That sort of thing is exactly part of the problem, isn't it? It's winding people up even further.
I think, what happened in that incident, I understand that it was a borough councillor, made comments on social media, action's been taken. I don't think it could have been taken any more quickly. That councillor's removed themselves from the group, has resigned from the council, and there'll be a by-election. You know what? Those things can't be tolerated, particularly at times like this when we see some of the tension caused. But social media has a wider meaning than that. Do you know what? Social media is a force for good, but it's also a horrendous force for bad when misinformation is spread, when we see clips of things that are taken out of context. We saw what happened in Manchester Airport, and people who then went on to see the full thing had different opinions. The rights and wrongs of all those things, but social media operators, those tech firms, have a responsibility to ensure that their platforms aren't used to advance crime. They aren't used to spread misinformation. Do you know what? If you go on there and you put a video together and use copyright music, they'll come down on you like a ton of bricks. If you go on there and you spread misinformation, the exact same thing has to happen.
But why doesn't it happen? I mean, it's a great point, but you were in power for 14 years. It just feels that if I had to say who was more powerful, Elon Musk or the Prime Minister, I'd say Elon Musk.
Do you know what? We have to clamp down on it as we would in any other sort of communications. We've seen the online safety bill come forward, which was huge in terms of the difference it's made of who's responsible, who's accountable. Earlier in the year, we saw the then Home Secretary out there talking to the tech companies directly, telling them that they are going to be held responsible.
But they're not. But they're laughing at the British politicians. They are laughing at you because you might call them in, you might talk tough on them. But what's happened? What's happened on X for the last year is more and more disinformation is being spread, and Elon Musk is loving it. He's loving having a row with the British Prime Minister on the subject. He's actively laughing at the state of Britain.
For me, I think there is more being done. The fact that we moved the online, you know what, these platforms move so fast
Yeah.
in the way that they're changing. We've started to make massive progress in bringing the online safety bill. We started that engagement with those tech companies with the last Home Secretary. I'd like to see the current Home Secretary get over there, engage them, hold them to account, and have those conversations. At the moment, I think it's been moved down, well, downgraded in the sense it's been handed to the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. We have to be realistic in taking these things on because they have huge consequences. And the people who choose to use those platforms to spread misinformation should also be held to account. And that's what we're going to see in the courts in the coming weeks.
Elon Musk has called the Prime Minister two-tier Keir and asked, is this Britain or Soviet Union? Where do your sympathies lie? Is it with Elon Musk or is it with Keir Starmer?
Oh, well, you know what? I'll let those two have their own spats. But I think when it comes to two-tier policing, do you know what? There are people who've said about what the Prime Minister said, and why didn't you bring up the fact that weapons were on display in Birmingham the other day? That's a question for Keir Starmer. I think actually in this country, the law operates without fear or favour. We have professional police officers out there who work round the clock, do the right thing. It doesn't matter who you are. If you decide to break the law, police in this country and the courts will hold you to account. For anybody who reads the stuff online that certain communities aren't being held to account, they need to have a look at what's going on in the courts. I quickly looked at what had gone on in response to Middlesbrough the other day, people who'd been seen. We saw people who'd rocked up in response to what they'd seen on social media to get involved in violent disorder. I saw there was consequences for them. And at the same time, on the same day, somebody who turned up to the counter protest armed and ready to cause harm and havoc was also being held to account. The police in this country do a damn good job. They're professionals. And regardless of who you are, regardless of your motivations, you will be held to account if you commit a crime.
So there is no two-tier policing in your view, because Robert Jenrick, who's going to be on this program in about 45 minutes' time, has said there should be no squeamishness or selectivity in policing, implying that there is squeamishness and selectivity in policing.
I'm saying there shouldn't be any selectivity, and I think our professional police officers do just that. If you've got questions about what Keir Starmer says and how he might be one-sided in his views on who does and doesn't commit crimes and who isn't responsible, my view is whoever you are, whatever your motivations, whether it's concerns about immigration, whether it's concerns about your place of worship, you will be held to account by the law. And that's exactly what our courts are doing right now. That's exactly what police officers who are knocking on the doors of those people are doing right now. And that's the right thing to do. That's what I believe. Yeah. Keir Starmer will answer his own questions. You'll have to get him on and ask him.
Yeah, we do try and do that, and he doesn't always come on. Just before you go, Rishi Sunak still technically leader of your party, leader of the opposition. We've not seen any public appearance, interview, or on-camera statement from him since all this began. Where on earth is Rishi Sunak?
I think the leader of the opposition's doing his job. I think actually you've seen. I think wasn't the Home Secretary on the shadow Home Secretary?
He's not the leader. He's not Rishi Sunak, is it? I'm just saying that the country is in a relative crisis. We've seen an awful lot of the Prime Minister. Where is Rishi Sunak?
Actually, wasn't Rishi's statement published yesterday?
He's done a tweet. He's not made himself visible anywhere.
There was a statement yesterday.
That's enough, is it?
Opposition. Have you asked him on?
We ask him all the time.
When did you ask him on today? And you ended up with me.
Yeah, exactly. We try for Rishi Sunak. We've got look. We're glad
me on today. I'm sorry, but you're stuck with me this morning. Fire away. I'm happy to take all the questions.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, Matt. But Rishi Sunak was not willing to come on. I think it's probably fair to say. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks.
That's Matt Vickers there, the Shadow Policing Minister, acting in the role of the leader of the opposition for us.